Okay, countdown from 3, 2, 1.
Cool, so for ideas, when I came up with a new concept, I was kind of stuck. And you know when you have a lucid dream, wake up in the middle of the night, really clear idea of what you want, you fall back asleep, you wake up and you can't quite remember it. My friend taught me you could train yourself to write it down, so when you wake up, you've got a memory trigger for these things. Sometimes you write in a language that doesn't exist, but sometimes you have good ideas. This dream in particular was a film about Big, and it's kind of like New Orleans inspired, so everything was childhood, but the ice creams were cocktails, the games were playing for cocktails, all this. So I was like, okay, I want to pursue the ice cream gelato aspect. So I studied University of Reading about ice cream, but your Italian friends tell you gelato is very different. So I went to Gelato University in Bologna to study here. And I thought it'd be really fun, you know, ready, steady, cook, let's get into it, make ice cream, gelato. But there's a lot more classroom environment, sit down, and actually a lot of science behind it. So actually from a bartender's brain, that was the catalyst for me, like, maybe there's things we can do for this with cocktails. And then also, like as I said, that dream was also like frozen drinks, slushies. So again, talking about blending cultures, New Orleans, like Nathan just mentioned as well, I got a lot of inspiration from that. You know, all these amazing shops, these really like, you know, diabetes-inspired slushies and stuff like this. And so I wanted to really do this, but actually, all the machines you have in the UK are very crap. You know, they're very plasticky, not very good texture. And so I wanted to pursue an American one, which was Taylor's, but also Aaron Rose. I was like, it's been like a 10-year thing trying to work out how they make the frozen Irish coffee. We're nearly there, but again, there's another inspiration for me, taken from New Orleans. If you've ever went to Hoot the Redeemer, you'll see that. But how we approach things is through Shoe Harry. So Shoe is where you learn things, theory. The Ha is where you learn things practically, do it actually in real. And then the Re is when you understand it and you can take it another direction. So it's how we always follow these principles by learning about New Orleans, all this kind of stuff, and then we can take it a different direction, just like we've done here. So again, we've learned about ice cream gelato, studied, learned, and then by chance, we did switching, and then we've had an exponential curve up with like freeze drying, freeze concentration suppression. But the reason why is because we're constantly learning. Every time we learn, it's a piece of a jigsaw puzzle, but that piece, we don't know what puzzle it's going to yet. So the more pieces we get, by chance, we're going to find that right puzzle. In this case, it was Eisbock, German beer. So we're here in Germany learning about Eisbock, and this is where they freeze the beer traditionally outside in the winter, and they take the water out. And here they'd concentrate it, the ABV would go up, so would the texture, so would the volume and flavor. And then this is where I live, by the way, in the freezer. I know people are not sure about that, but this is where we then took that idea and then got a freezer cold enough, minus 45 centigrade, to freeze spirits, where we take water out. So again, that's where we started from Italy, Germany for the beer, and we weren't looking for making a new technique, but there was just like a thought, and then we took it there. And then going back to Italy, the affogato, I absolutely love it, and I think this is the best way to make it, where you put the ice cream on the sides, pour it in the middle. Some people do a scoop, but that's not legit. This is a legit way. But we were like, how do we blend cultures? How do we do like Italian, Scottish? I think actually I've always talked about Italy being the parallel universe of Scotland. How do we put those things together? And this is where we came up with the malted affogato. So you can see the espresso, coffee culture. You've got the ice cream, but this time it's coconut. But then obviously the Scottish inspiration, malted barley and Scotch, and together. You know, blending those cultures together and making something awesome. So it's basically like an espresso martini meets an affogato. And then not only are we talking about drinks, we're talking about art as well. Guys, follow this guy, really talented graffiti artist from Glasgow. So we've worked together for 10 years. I was trying to find an artist, went to my friend's art gallery, I'm like, who is this guy? I like his art. Got in touch, and we really got on. So we've done work with him for the past 3 bars. But you know when you have a friend, and you basically have to use words, you can be like, you know, or and they understand what you're talking about. These are very rare friends. You've got to hold on to them for dear life. This is the same guy as him. So we don't actually talk or email. We talk with drawings. Thankfully, I'm a little bit evolved from the stickman drawing level. But so what I'll do is I'll draw, thankfully, and he really understands my direction, and then he will make it look awesome. And actually, this is such a good way. I think I always try and time it how much back and forth we do. I think on average we do maybe 3 back and forths. until we're finalized it. So it's a really great way of doing it. I wish we could just chain him into our dungeon forever and just use him for every single project, but he's done big things now. He's done stuff with Oakland Athletics. But going back to the parallel universe, this is how we approach flavor. So we're seeing heat techniques, you know, boo. But anyway, so then we have all these things. We see all the goals, but then we see the parallel universe is the freezing. So we're trying to see, that's how we approach how we develop new techniques, is what are the goals? So for example, sous vide. So here, what are the goals? We have the vacuum chamber to get rid of the air, to infuse, and then you've got the water bath to marry. And again, talking about jigsaw puzzles that we didn't know the right puzzle, we're also studying about freeze expansion. Like, I was like, if a pipe bursts with ice, metal, surely there's something here that we can harness. And then that's where we realized if we filled a keg full of the cocktail with something to infuse, and then when it expands, it's like the vacuum chamber. It gets rid of all the air and infuses into the fruit. And then when it thaws, the flavor molecules combine together, so it's marrying. So same goals, but completely different outcomes. So again, parallel universes. And then recently I was in Japan, Tokyo Confidential, Holly Graham, and I was at the yakitori, awesome. But then I was hearing the sizzling and crackling, and I was thinking, if I put my finger on that, burns. If I put something on something really cold, blister, 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 blister. There's a connection here. So what we're going to do now is we're using these really cold things from Alinea called anti-griddles. So it's like basically a glorified ice cream things. And we're going to try freeze grilling. We know it's going to make a difference. We're just not sure it's going to make a substantial difference. But I think hopefully you to see here is about, I want to leave you with this. You have to stay very, very curious. You have to ask questions like, why is James wearing a striped t-shirt today? Why are you sitting on the stairs? Why is this floor wood? Why is this bar here? I'm not using it. So you have to ask questions, be curious, and that's where you'll lead to new things. So thank you very much.